Hello, chat. Give it a moment. You girls loading in? Oh, God. I'm all the way up here. That's not very cash money of you. Hello, everybody. Hello. What's up? It is me, your good bitch, Rosemary, darling. Back on my bullshit. And, I still haven't gotten chat working. Hold up. Let me do that for you guys real fast so you can see yourselves on the screen. Wouldn't that be nice? Hold up just one moment. I hope you all are having a great day. I hope you're taking care of yourselves. Grab a drink, grab a snack. Soup? I hope you had some soup. That'd be nice. Okay, what I need is... No, I don't want to hear myself. Nope, no inception. Let's see. Up it out? No, that's not what I... Oh, maybe? No, that's not what I need at all. Nope. Oh well, I can't find a way to do it, so I will just go to my active screen. I deeply apologize. I will... What are you doing in the middle over here again? But yes, tonight we will be reading the Creepypasta. I've always been a big fan of Creepypasta ever since I was like, 10, 11, 12, somewhere around that age. Because listen, that's when lots of people I know started getting into really creepy stuff. I am prepared for the spooky spaghetti. That's the attitude I love to see. Well, I have arrived. Hello. Hello there. We're gonna start. I got a bunch of ones that are labeled as short, so that way no one pasta takes up too much of our time. Unless you guys have a specific one that is somewhat longer that you want me to read, I will be sticking to shorter ones, just so we can cover some more stories, and we will be briefly discussing them after I finish each story. But yeah, grab a blanket and grab your favorite fall drink, because it's time for Creepypasta reading. If you like this, please sure to give me a like and subscribe to me on YouTube. It genuinely helps me out. I am starting to stream on YouTube more, and I will also be making proper videos and shorts and all that jazz very soon. I've already started. There should be... Yes, there is one proper YouTube video. For some reason, there was another one I made, but I lost it. Once I recover it, though, I'll post it. But who was phone? It was me, your unicorn mom. And the first one we'll be reading is called Pass It On. And if any of these are upsetty spaghetti for you, feel free to tune on out for a little bit, put me on mute, and come back in 5 minutes, maybe 6, just to be safe. But with that, let's begin. It's quite an interesting concept. Those little pass it on messages, I mean, chain letters and people telling you post this in 5 different comments or else you'll die tonight. Interesting indeed, but the idea lacks originality. It's the same story with each one. Pass it on or die. People pass it on and they go on living. A happy ending for everyone. But what if there was a little twist? Let's say there's a photo out there. It's not just one of those can't be found anywhere else type of pictures. It's actually really easy to find. Just use your chosen search engine and type in black and white photo of twins. You should be presented with a variety of different black and white photos of twins, but let me help and tell you what to look for. You're looking for a picture of 2 twin girls wearing black dresses and white headbands. The twin on the left has a straight face, while the one on the right is smiling. Found it? Good. Now, as you'll see, there's nothing particularly unnerving about the photo. It may be a little creepy, but other than that, it looks as normal as any other picture you've ever come across. Now here's the twist. If you do pass it on, you'll die. Now, I know most of you, given this particular set of choices, would choose to leave the picture be. But allow me to elaborate upon what happens when you don't pass this picture on to someone else. If you leave it alone after seeing it, you'll have nightmares. I know. Bad dreams don't sound so bad when compared to the alternative. But trust me, it gets worse. It all begins with something simple. Before long, you'll see the twins standing side by side in the darkness. The girl on the left will leave, and you'll be left alone with her smiling twin. And just before you wake up, she'll whisper, "Pass it on," and her smile will widen, ever so slightly. I know, it doesn't sound like much of a nightmare. The first of many. It's fairly subtle. But with each successive nightmare, things begin to change. Gradually, the smiling girl gets closer and closer to you, while her smile widens to impossible length. You won't be able to help but feel greatly disturbed and unsafe when it happens. Don't worry, that's normal. What next, however, not so much. You'll try to wake yourself up. You'll try to move, but nothing will work. You'll find yourself trapped. She'll bring out various instruments. A knife, chains, gasoline, matches. Many devices to make you feel uneasy. Then you panic. You can't help but think of all the horrible things this twisted, sadistic little child has in store for you. And does she ever have some horrible things in store for you? Let's take a moment to think about the possibilities. What do you think she'll do to you? Wrap the chains around your head and pull it until your skull splits. Gouge out your eyes, cut your tongue, slice off your ears, burn you alive knowing that you can't move. That and more, my dear. You'll take the term unimaginable torture too lightly until you fall asleep. If you think she'll lash out you with the chains, she'll do so only after she's laid them in fire and stuck railroad spikes in your back. If you think she'll burn you, she'll tear open your torso, pour gasoline into the wound, and then light the match. You'll wake up screaming. Your body will remember the pain it's endured while you quiver in fear. Every time you wake up, you'll notice subtle differences about your body. A bruise here, a scratch there. But as each nightmare gradually gets worse, so do the marks, which shall be left behind. Before long, the scratches will become fresh, bloody scars. If you dreamt that you took a sledgehammer to the knee, you'll wake and rise only to find your legs buckling below you as pain surges through your kneecaps. All the while, her words linger in the back of your mind. You'll try to avoid sleeping, but it's no use. The twins make their way into your reality. They're always there. At your home, at your place of work, or at school. You would fight back, but their visage appears in place of the faces of your loved ones. Eventually, you'll hide yourself away from everyone in an effort to avoid seeing these demonic children. It's all in vain, however. You'll see them in that millisecond of darkness when you blink. You'll see them in reflections and in your peripheral vision. You'll see them everywhere. You can't escape. You'll consider taking a way out, even attempt it, but they won't let you go so easily. That shotgun that you've got hidden in the closet, revolver in the nightstand, useless. How strange. You seem to be jammed or missing a trigger. A cocktail of cold and flu and pain medications won't help either. It's so very odd indeed. You just can't seem to hold them down long enough for anything to take effect. Soon enough, you won't be able to distinguish your dreams from reality. You'll awake from one torturous experience only to be greeted by alternative horrors. Without realizing it, you've given the twins a new playmate. And do they ever like to play? Well, at least one does. While one plays with you, the other will stand there, watching, chanting, "Pass it on," over and over again, all while ignoring your cries for help. There's no happy endings to be had. Should you remain optimistic, I'm afraid you're just as naive as those who came before you. And there were many, oh so many. And you won't be the last, I've made certain of that. Now, you have a decision to make. Now that you've discovered the picture and discovered the consequences, whatever shall you do? Might you decide to leave the picture be and pray that this was just some twisted story? Or will you decide to pass it on? That just sounds like a good evening, bruh. Alright, that's our first story for the evening. Pass it on. I'm assuming the image in the thumbnail is meant to be the image that you find and then, you know, pass on to some unsuspecting poor soul. I like the meta-ness of it. I like stories that are kind of a little bit meta. They were my least favorite as a kid, but now that I'm an adult, they're like my favorite. I really love it. Like, I love how it's not just like, oh yeah, then there's gore, but it's like they focus more on the psychological aspect of those injuries being inflicted on you. I like that. I feel like the rating it has is pretty good. The 7.81 out of 10. I agree with that. I feel like that's a very fitting rating. I think it's worth it. 3 spoopy fight of me. Alright, let me take a tea break. Delicious. If you want to read this pasta for yourself or keep it for yourself, I will be linking every creepypasta in my Discord at the end of the stream. So, you know, just so we have a little archive of what I've read and so I don't accidentally start reading the same stories over and over and over. The next one we will be reading is the psychological horror is pretty good. Yeah, because it's like they could have gone overboard with the gore, but they didn't, and I really appreciate the restraint. Because gore isn't scary unless you see real gore in real life. Because then you know that something really bad happened to somebody. Also fitting to the spooky theme, I'm watching this while working on a very angry short stack medium. Oh, you're making me as a character? I appreciate it! Dwarven Spirit Barbarian. Oh, how fun. The next one I will be reading is called Her Silence by Kat Crane. I hope I read that correctly. Again, the triggers are all up here. If these are not your cup of tea, come back in 5 to 6 minutes, and I will see you then. Her silence. He turns the steering wheel in different directions, taking different roads when he needs to. He needs to go through the woods to get to his destination. He's confused, but not about that. What confuses him is why his sister is being so silent as she sits in the back seat. The time is currently 6:36, and he just picked up Emily from her friend Julia's house. He was thankful that he didn't have to get her out of the car and knock on the door, as she was already standing out in the yard waiting for him. He tried to make conversation with her. How'd it go at Julia's? Did you have fun? Has her rabbit gotten better? But everything he said was met with silence. It weirds him out, and he grows slightly concerned. Is she okay? But an uncomfortable knot forms in his stomach when he glances at the rearview mirror and sees her staring at him. Or, more specifically, the side of his neck? With looks like hunger in her eyes. Are you alright, Em? She doesn't reply. He looks back again when he hears an odd sound coming from her mouth and sees her licking his lips. What are you doing? No answer. He lets out a shaky sigh before reaching and turning the radio on, to put some music in the car and distract him from the situation. Eventually, they pull up in the driveway and he stops the car, unbuckling and opening his door. He looks back and she's still sitting there, unmoving, but her eyes follow him. Come on, Emily, you can't stay out here. What are you doing? Nothing. Seriously, what's gotten into you? You haven't said a word. No sound leaves her mouth as she unbuckles, opens the door, and steps out of the car. He runs his hand through his hair in slight confusion and relief, before reaching back in the car and grabbing his phone out from one of the little slots beside the cup holder. He presses the button as he closes the door and heads towards the front door of the house, his sister falling behind. 2 missed calls and 12 unread messages from Emily. What? He mutters, confusion lacing his voice. Why is she texting me? He thinks. When was she texting me? The time now reads 7:13. He feels uneasy, like something's not quite right, but he doesn't know what exactly. Pulling out the key and sticking it into the hole in the knob, he opens the door and walks inside. When he looks behind him, Emily isn't there. Emily? He raises an eyebrow as he turns to look at her. Emily? Where'd you go? He doesn't see her. Em? He suddenly sees an Emily-shaped shadow walk into the yard and he follows. What are you doing? You know you're... But he stops. Nobody's there. This feeling of dread hits him in the chest as he looks out into the dark woods beside his house. He sees a figure standing just behind the outline of the trees. It's short, with long hair, just like Emily. This isn't right. She lost her mind? Maybe it's him that's losing his mind. Chills run up his spine as he walks closer to her. Emily, what are you doing? She turns and runs out of sight. This doesn't make sense. She's usually terrified of the woods, especially at night. There's no way she'd go in there unless something was wrong. Without thinking, he takes off through the trees. He doesn't know what's going on, but he isn't going to let Emily get herself into danger. He turns the flashlight in his phone on as he pushes past all the weeds in his way and avoids tripping over anything. Emily, he calls. Come out right now. His head turns when he hears a twig snap. Come on, Emily. If this is some kind of prank, it's not funny. The tension rises beneath him as complete silence fills his ear. Oh no. Is it a bear? Or a panther? He shines the flashlight in every direction, trying to see something. Anything. He could feel his breathing quicken. Is Emily okay? Snap. Another twig. No. He's not gonna leave her out here to die alone. He's gonna find her, even if he dies trying. He feels his phone buzz against his palm as he looks to the screen. Another text from Emily, and he lets out a relieved breath. At least she's still alive. He opens his messages and reads over what she said before letting out a confused, fearful gasp. Crack. This time it's the leaves, and it comes directly behind him. His hand shakes as he slowly turns around and lays eyes on her. A low growl. A scream. Silence. His phone buzzes and glows from the ground. Dude, what happened to picking me up? Mike? Answer me. What are you doing? Idiot, please reply. Mike? Mike. Mom isn't answering either. Somebody please reply. Come on. I can't stay at Julia's forever. Are you alive, Mike? Talk to me. I'm coming. And there we go. Her Silence by Cat Crane. I just have one little complaint with this one. Not a major one, just a little gripe, a little bitch. And it's that character logic in universe kind of took me out of the story halfway. Like, when he saw a bunch of missed messages and he didn't, like, read them as soon as he had a chance, I'm like, that's unrealistic. Nobody I know, except for, like, maybe my boomer parents, would see that they got a whole shitload of texts and not at least check the previews. Like, and that's the thing, previews of the texts you receive show up too. Like, he would see that Emily just texted him with, "Why didn't you pick me up?" when she's in the car, clearly not on her phone. So that's... kind of took me out of it. Pardon me for the burp. It's okay. I like the premise. I like some parts. I like the idea, but just the character logic needs to be a little bit better. But yeah, that's it. That's my gripe. But yeah, overall, I've definitely read much worse. So keep at it, Cat. Just keep at it. You're doing great. Tea break before I move on to the next one. Ooh, this one's got a pretty high rating. This one will be slightly longer at 9 minutes of reading. How fun, how fun, how fun. I don't think there's anything here that anyone in my chat would see as like a trigger warning. But just in case, again, if any of these things are not your cup of tea, This is your cue to mosey on out. Interesting? Yeah, I agree. It's interesting. We are now going to read Please Stay Awake by J.T. Grogan. Again, hope I said that right. If I didn't, I apologize. Come back in 7 to 9 minutes if this is not your cup of tea. Dark, cold, and eerie. Those are the only words I can come up with to describe the house in which I lived with my family for the majority of my life. Mostly dark, blistering cold during the winter, and always eerie. Sometimes there would be strange noises coming from the cellar, too. It had often given me the creeps, though I would never admit that to my mother. I figured I was too old to let some silly noises scare me anyway. I'd been trying to act like the man of the house ever since my dad left when I was 7. I'd always hoped I would never turn out to be like my father, whom I hated with a burning passion. As far as he goes, I suppose I'd better just leave it at that. I lived in the house with my mother, Linda, and my uncle Kevin, on a vast piece of land in Steinen, Indiana. Steinen was a tiny piece of shit in the middle of nowhere. Nobody liked living there. I didn't have any friends because I was homeschooled, and I'd never seen another kid my age in Steinen, since we almost never left the house unless my mom had to go into town to buy groceries. However, I was always very close to Uncle Kevin. When I was little, he would tell me ghost stories right before bed, which my mother hated. Wait, I think brief pause while Coffee Bean comes back into the house.
Happy Halloween, motherfuckers.
Happy Halloween, motherfucker! Thumbs up?
Huh? Yeah, got the car to your folks. The engine didn't explode.
That's good. Alright, I'll leave you be now.
Yeah.
Have fun, sweetie. Alright. Timing back in. Let's see. Stop it, Kev. You're gonna give him nightmares, she would snap. Oh, I did get nightmares indeed, and sometimes it seemed as though the nightmares refused to end. They crept into the back of my mind like a spider crafting its web. The story he told more often was one about a monster with a contorted body and black eyes. According to legend, as Uncle Kevin called it, even though I knew he made it up himself, the monster would come into your room if you were awake past your bedtime and hide in your closet, watching you the whole night. Of course, this is just a silly little tale that Kevin would tell me so I wouldn't stay up late. Even so, I can't tell you how many times that horrible creature had popped into my head over the years. On this particular night, I decided to go to bed early in an attempt to sleep off a pounding headache. I lied down on my icy bed and sank underneath the covers, hiding my face from whatever may have been lurking inside of my head. After setting my glasses down on the nightstand beside my bed, I reached over and flicked the lights off. The darkness made me feel alive in a very strange way, almost as though I was mesmerized by the nothingness. As I looked around the room, seeing almost nothing but the pitch-black darkness surrounding me, I felt entranced, as if something was forcing me to look. Of course, there was nothing to look at least not with the eyes. This was something you could only witness within the deepest corridors of your mind. A part of your mind that you always dread visiting and can never seem to return from. Out of nowhere, I began to hear scratches upon the window above my bed. My eyes immediately burst open, and I felt like I wasn't able to close them again. What the fuck was that? I asked myself. Nothing. Of course it was nothing. It could have been anything, right? Right. Just my mind playing tricks on me in the dark. No big deal. But in a moment of childish curiosity, I decided to peer out the window, just to make sure I was hearing nothing more than a tree branch brushing up against the glass. But then it hit me like a bag of bricks. There is no tree next to my window. Still, I decided we'd better just sleep it off and think more about it in the morning. It's probably on my head. It had to be. I found it unusually difficult to fall asleep that night, as if somebody, or something, was trying to keep me up. I woke up the next morning with that sound still locked in my brain. It had to have been coming from somewhere, but where? Shit, I had no idea. But then I remembered. The cellar. I built up as much courage as I could muster and slowly crept down into the abyss. Jesus, I hadn't been down there in a year, maybe longer. I'd almost forgotten what it looked like. Nothing but clouds of cobwebs and stacks of cardboard boxes shoved against the walls. I rustled through a couple of boxes until I stumbled upon a picture I'd drawn when I was a child. It was a sketch of a grotesque creature. It definitely wasn't human. This thing barely had a face, just black eyes and no mouth. Its body was tall and thin, and was contorted into a shape I had never even seen before. The more I looked at the drawing, the more I was reminded of the story of my— sorry. Sorry, I saw your shadow, and I was like, moving object in the corner of my vision, I'm a teacher. I'm sorry. Oh. Let's see. I was more reminded of that story my uncle used to tell me. It appeared to be raining above the creature, and towards the bottom of the paper I had scribbled, "Please stay awake," in giant letters. I didn't know what the hell that was supposed to mean, but I folded the paper up and stuffed it in my pocket. I quickly made my way up the staircase into the kitchen and went about my day as usual, keeping that drawing in my mind, trying to remember what it meant and why I'd drawn it in the first place. I looked outside and noticed that it had begun to rain. I didn't want to think about that creature any longer, so I walked into my dimly lit room and plopped onto my bed. I fell asleep before I even knew it. When I awoke, it was exactly 3 a.m. This night was colder and darker than usual. The farm was soaked with rain from earlier in the evening. The moon was full and radiant. It almost didn't look real. For an instant, I glanced out my bedroom window, and I could swear I saw something walking quickly through the yard. When it spotted me, it slunk behind a tree as if it were trying to hide from me. It looked exactly like what I had drawn as a child. I ran into Uncle Kevin's room and began shaking him awake. "Kevin! Kevin!" He loved the room out of his eyes. "What's up, bud? It's late," he asked, bewildered at my excitement. I looked up at his bloodshot eyes and softly said, "I saw someone in the yard." Kevin looked at me with hesitation. "No, you probably saw an animal. Get back to bed." I know what I saw. This was no animal, or at least not one that I had ever seen. Not even in my worst fucking nightmares. I knew I couldn't tell him exactly what I had seen, as he would never believe me. "No, Kevin, it was not an animal. Please, it was a man. I think. Well, just please go out and check." Uncle Kevin leapt up and grabbed a shotgun from under the bed. "Alright, come on. Show me where it is. Let's try not to wake your mom. I'll scare the fucker off." We went outside and I pointed to the tree. I whispered to Kevin, "I saw him go behind that tree." My uncle bravely walked up to the tree and peered around it. Nothing. He searched the entire farm for well over half an hour, but he never found anyone or anything. "Let's go back in, bud. There's no one out here. Keep the doors locked tonight." He was wrong. I knew there was something out there. I crawled into bed and threw the covers over my face. I could hear the blistering wind coming from outside. It pierced my ears with a whistle that I thought only dogs could detect. Suddenly, I heard a tapping sound upon my window. The sound grew louder with each tap. I tightened the blankets around my body. The taps slowly turned into knocks. Louder and faster the knocks became. The knocks turned into bangs. I thought the glass was going to break. Then, out of nowhere, it stopped. No more taps. No more knocks. No more bangs. No more wind. I was relieved. Suddenly, I heard a low, chilling voice in my ear. "Please, stay awake." It couldn't be. No, it couldn't be. I ran into the hallway, ready to make my way into my mother's room when I saw it. Whatever it was, I still don't know. It was holding Kevin's lifeless, mangled body in its arms. Carved deeply into my uncle's torso were the words, "Please stay awake." I tried to let out a scream, but only silence filled the dead air. I sprinted through the door of my mother's bedroom and saw her body lying in the middle of the floor. She was covered in blood, and her left arm had been ripped straight out of its socket. Written next to her in her own blood were the words, "Please stay awake." I began to sob, and when I turned around, the creature was gone. I don't know where the hell it went, and I'm not sure I want to. I closed my eyes as tightly as I could and let out the loudest scream I could muster. I called the police and lied down on the cold, now blood-soaked floor, waiting for them to arrive. It felt like hours. Finally, the police showed up to find me in the fetal position next to my mother's corpse. I told them everything I saw. I showed them my drawing. I told them about the taps, the knocks, the bangs. I told them what I'd seen outside, but of course they wouldn't hear a word of it. Why should they? All they could see was a lonely kid hovering over his dead mother, her blood covering my clothes almost as much as it covered the floor. It's cold in this cell. It's dark and lonely. The silence is the only saving grace. Constant, peaceful silence. Tonight, it's raining outside. It's colder, darker, and wetter than ever. But, unfortunately, I must stop writing now. I just heard a tap on my window. I wanted to like this one. I really wanted to like this one. I feel like the rating set me up and made me think it was gonna be better than it was. First of all, formatting is not great. There should be way more paragraph breaks. And also, like, some words are used incorrectly. And some of the rating choices are, like, really, like, the tense is kind of fucked up. Gets a F from me. Yeah, I hate to say it, but me too. I'm glad I'm not the only one. It's too cliche for me. Yeah, like, so many cliches, like, just... And the ending feels very unsatisfying. Like, we don't... With most creepypastas, it's like, with this one, I had my gripes with her silence, but I understand it. Like, whatever he brought home, it wasn't his sister, it was pretending to be his sister, and then it lured him out into the woods to eat him, possibly ate his mother too. But with this one, I don't get it. The plot is lost. The plot is completely lost. And I feel like this might be, like, a younger writer, so, like, I'm not gonna go, like, super, like, ugh. Like, again, it's not the worst thing I've ever written, but it just... read. Sorry, I did not write this. But it's just... I don't know. It feels like it didn't even know what it wanted to do. Like, with a story... There has to be, like, a clear sense of direction from it, you know? And this one feels a little bit directionless. I feel like the story itself didn't know what it wanted to do. And this person could, like, improve from this and write better stories in the future. I see the potential here, but it's a no from me, dog. I'm sorry. I'm sorry, KT. I deeply apologize. But, JT, sorry. It's a no for me, dog. This one, though. I'm excited for this one. I love ghost trains. Pass It On so far seems to be my favorite one of the night. Because it's like, it's innovative. And while it wasn't perfect, like, it was very good. Very meta. Its focus was in the right places. It knew what it wanted to do. It knew the style it wanted to take. And it went there. So far, Pass It On, I really like. But I'm really hoping that Ghost Train is good. Like, I really want Ghost Train to be good. Because I love trains. The older I get, the more I just fall in love with trains. It's fucking weird. But yeah. Trains, man. Fucking trains. Alright, if any of these things are not your jam, come back in 8 minutes, and I will see you then. But for now, let us board the ghost train, and hope that motherfucking Sabine doesn't suplex it. Sorry, I had to make that reference. The house I grew up in, I just watched Bullet Train at the cinema and it was dope. I have no idea what that's about. Would recommend? Yeah, I'll try to check it out sometime. The house I grew up in was right next to a set of busy railroad tracks. From my bedroom window, I would watch the trains roll by. There were 3 types of trains that used those tracks, and still do to this day. They were the long, lumbering freight trains pulling boxcars, flatbeds, and tankers, which I would try to count as they clattered by. Then there were the fast-moving commuter trains of the Metropolitan Area Transit Authority, aka MATA or VM, as some people would call it, and Amtrak passenger trains that would breeze by, heading to and from the central station in the heart of the city. Now, when most people see trains, they just see big machines rolling down ribbons of steel, but me, I saw the trains as symbols of freedom and a way out of the hood. Whenever I saw a train, I would imagine all the places it was going to and from. Naturally, my favorite toy as a youngin' were my Thomas the Tank Engine toys. I had all the characters. Thomas, Percy, Gordon, James, Toby, Daisy, all of them. When I was 10, my grandparents bought me a Lionel train set for my birthday. To me, it was the best present ever. It consisted of a small steam engine and 4 passenger cars. There was even a small bottle of drops you'd put in the smokestack that allowed the engine to make smoke. I'd spend hours watching that toy train run around in an oval, pretending it was real and that it was driving the locomotive through forests, past fields, across the mountains, and past small towns. I eventually developed other interests, namely girls, but I never lost my interest in trains. When I got older, I applied for a job as an engineer trainee on MATA and got it! For me, it was a dream come true. After I took the required classroom courses and exams, I soon found myself riding in the cab of the sleek diesel engines that pull the commuter trains. Now, the way the trainee program was set up was that they'd have you ride on the different lines of the system for a few months with a regular engineer. It'd be on one line for a few weeks, then I'd be assigned to another line in order to be more familiar with the different routes. VM has 8 routes, all numbered. The main line is line 1, and all branch lines are line 2, line 3, and so on. I started on line 7 in the first weeks before being moved on to line 8. Now, line 8, or the Cloverton line, as it is sometimes called, is one of the longest branch lines on the system, second only to line 2, aka the Miller Sport line. The first time I rode on line 8, I was with a veteran engineer named Hank. Now, Hank had been with the company from the beginning, when the old railroads decided they wanted out of the money-losing commuter services and handed all their locomotives and rolling stock to MATA. We had the Night Owl service, which starts at 7 p.m. and ends at 5 in the morning. We picked up our first passengers at Central Station, and we were soon on our way to Cloverton. As we were going down the track, Hank turned to me and said, "There's something you should know if you're going to be working for this railroad, especially if they decide to put you on line 8 once they make you an official engineer." I looked at him and I said, "Oh yeah? What's that?" Hank paused to blow the horn for a crossing and then said, "This line is haunted." I replied, "Haunted? How is the line haunted?" Hank looked at me and said, "It supposedly started with a curse. Back in the late 1800s, when one of the old railroad companies was building the line, the company built the line across the edge of an old farm that belonged to a man named Ezra Gray without his permission. Ezra demanded that the railroad remove the tracks from his property and relay them somewhere else, but the railroad refused, due to it costing too much time and money to do so. Mr. Gray tried to sue the railroad, but was unsuccessful. You see, railroads were quite powerful back in those days, and the railroad had a lot of politicians and judges in their pocket. To add insult to injury, Ezra not only had to pay the court costs, but had to pay the railroad as well for all the money they spent on the legal proceedings. This bankrupted Ezra, and he was forced to sell the farm, minus the small patch of land the tracks were built on, and Ezra Gray vowed to get even one way or another. When the line later opened up, Ezra stood on the tracks in front of the first train. The engineer tried to stop in time, but Ezra was hit anyway. Before he died, Ezra cursed the line, saying that it would bring death and sorrow. Ever since then, there are a lot of mishaps and accidents on these tracks, and many people lost their lives. It is believed that some of those who died haunt various spots, and that a few of the trains that crash over the years come back as ghost trains, still rolling along the very rails we're on now. I looked at Hank as he blew the horn for another crossing. "Have you seen any ghosts on this line?" I asked. "Plenty," he said. "I've seen everything from headless trainmen to phantom lights and ghost trains." I didn't believe him at first, but didn't say anything. We eventually came to a curve in the track, and when we came out of it, I saw something that made my blood freeze. Coming at us was the headlight of another train. Hank, for God's sake, man, put the brakes on, I shouted. Don't you see the other trains coming this way? Hank responded, yeah, I see it. Don't worry, we'll be fine. I looked at Hank and screamed, are you crazy? We're about to die! Hank just pointed straight ahead and said, no, we're not. Get a good look at that train. I did, and saw that not only did the oncoming engine have the shape of one of the older type diesels, like you see in the photos, movies and TV shows from the 50s and 60s, but it seemed to be a transparent shadow with a headlight and lighted cab windows. What the... I started to say, but then the shadow train hit us. Well, not hit us, exactly. More like passed through us. Our whole cab was surrounded by shadows and streaks of light as what looked to be a passenger train patched through, and I swear I saw the pale, wispy figures of people sitting in the seats. Soon it was gone, and the cab of our engine returned to normal. What the hell was that? I exclaimed. Hank turned to me and said, that was one of the ghost trains I was talking about. Well, what's the story with that ghost train? I asked. Hank sighed and said, well, it happened shortly after MATA was established and took over all the commuter rail lines. An evening inbound train had just crested the long grade we're on now, and when it lost control and ran away, all downhill, before crashing and piling up on the curve at the bottom. Everyone on board was killed, and the cause of the wreck was blamed on the aging equipment MATA was using back then. Heck, with only a few exceptions, most of the engines MATA got from the old railroad were 25 to 30 years old, and about 30% of the coaches used were even older. Not long afterwards, the ghost of the train started making appearances along that stretch of track, becoming one of several ghost trains that haunt these rails. I looked at him, then the front window of the engine. What about the people back in the cars? Do you think they just saw what we saw? I asked. Hank just shrugged and said, probably, but I'm not sure most of them are used to it. No, wait. Probably, but I'm sure most of them are used to it, so I wouldn't worry too much. Our conductor is probably taking care of things right now. We continued on to Cloverton, and I arrived on time. We made runs back and forth all night, and several times I saw some of the scary things that Hank told me about. I was relieved when we finally tied up in the yard, leaving the coaches on one of the side tracks, and put the engine in the roundhouse. The next few nights, however, were hell. Every night run, I had at least a few creepy encounters along Line 8, all of them with Hank, who would just shrug them off as if they were nothing. But I guess after nearly 40 years, none of the ghosts bothered him anymore. After a few days, I was put on the day runs, which was a relief to me, and I didn't have to worry about seeing ghost trains or headless trainmen again. I eventually became a regular engineer and was put on the mainline run. I'm pretty content, but if the big wigs for the M ever decide me to put me on Line 8 night owl service, I'll quit. I love it! Oh, ghost train, you didn't disappoint me! I love how casual Hank is. Just like, oh yeah, it's a ghost train. Shrug. Listen, 40 years of ghosts would, like, discourage anyone from giving a shit. Like, if I saw the same ghosts around the same time for 40 years, I'd become a wizened bitch. I would just be like, oh yeah, that's, Hank the Headless. What's up, Hank? I love it. I love the characters. I love how Hank is just really casual about this shit. I love how we established the main character really loves trains. I love this one. I'm gonna put this one above Pass It On, but, like, so this is my number 1 and Pass It On is my number 2, but I really like this. Is this just a thinly veiled insult towards SEPTA, which is very TBH? What's SEPTA? Is that like a train line that did some shit? And oh, Bullet Train sounds fun. Sorry, I wanted to say something earlier, but I started reading and I'm like, I didn't want to stop. But yeah, Bullet Train sounds really cool. I should take Coffee Bean out. Well, maybe not take him out, but like, we can rent Bullet Train sometime. Because he's getting really into cyberpunk, and I just think trains and violence on trains is neat. Yeah, I like this one. I feel like this one could have actually gone on a little bit longer. Like, I feel like they could have justified, you know, some more stories and other stuff. But, you know, I love what is here. But yeah, I'll give it a passing grade. It's a yes for me, dog. It's the transit energy and agency, sorry, in Philly. I visited Philadelphia, and SEPTA is without a doubt the worst transit agency I've ever used. But I have used them. Ah, Jack Sparrow, welcome to the stream. Oh, look at this friendly face. Look at his cute. You like trains and violence and Japanese stuff? Watch Bullet Train, legit. I do like all three of those things, so I'll have to check it out. Not to mention that I haven't seen a good action flick in a while. Like, every time someone's like, oh yeah, this movie will be action-filled, there's like, maybe, like, a minute of action spread out over 3 hours. Yes, Marvel, I'm looking at you, bitch. Ooh, this one has a high-ass rating. He's a friend. Yeah, exactly. Look at his friendly smile. Look at him, just a dude. He's not allowed in my fucking closet at night, though. He's allowed during the day, but not at night. Because that's where the cats like to sleep. It's their closet, Mr. Smile, okay? You're not allowed to use it when the cats are using it. Alright, estimated reading time, 6 to 8 minutes. If this does not seem like your jam, feel free to bow out. I will see you in 6 to 8 minutes. Take care of yourself. Stay safe. Mwah. Mr. Smile, written by Alice Thompson. It was in early November of 1997. Hold up. I gotta turn down the music. It got a little loud. Sorry. Sorry, buddy. Sorry. There we go. Sorry about that. It was in early November of 1997 that a series of very strange sessions led a child psychologist in Maine to contact the authorities. It began when a patient of his began to tell him about one of their friends, this friend being imaginary as far as both the psychiatrist and the boy's parents were concerned. He called his friend Mr. Smile and would talk about him at great length during some sessions. The boy called him Mr. Smile both because he would always be smiling and because when he was around, the boy said everything felt happy. He said that there was a feeling of everything being okay. The boy in question was being treated for serious issues to do with anger and depression, but when Mr. Smile was around, he said that all the anger and the sadness seemed to just disappear. He said that Mr. Smile wouldn't speak, but rather just stand there at the foot of his bed. He smelled like candy floss, and just being there made the boy feel calm and safe. The psychiatrist assumed this imaginary friend was some sort of coping mechanism that the boy had developed to deal with the problems at home that had led to his violent temper, and thought nothing of it. Until another patient, a girl of about 9 years old, also began talking about her imaginary friend, Mr. Smile, and then a boy of 7, and then a boy of 12, and then a girl of 11. All in all, close to 15 separate patients all began to talk about Mr. Smile. The first few he'd put down to coincidence. After all, many children have imaginary friends, and the name and description of Mr. Smile were just generic enough that it didn't concern him too much at first. But as more and more of his patients told him about Mr. Smile, he began to grow concerned. He asked for more details. Every single one of them described him the same way, using the exact same words. Now, there was no way all of these children could be in contact with each other. 5 of them, for instance, were currently being homeschooled, and according to their parents, when he spoke to them, never even really left the house except when it was to accompany them on shopping trips. There was no way that every single one of these kids could have rehearsed or prepared their statements together, which led him to a deeply disturbing conclusion. He spoke privately with each of the children's parents, one at a time. He avoided disclosing too much information, but told them that something troubling had cropped up in multiple sessions with various patients, and that he believed there was a chance their child was at risk. He asked for their permission to discuss matters with the authorities, and that parents gave their consent, provided that they were kept in the loop as to what was going on. And so, over the course of the next week, the police came and talked to their children about their friend. They asked for details about his appearance, which they couldn't seem to describe apart from the smile, and that he was not like them. How he got into their house, anything he said or did while he was there. Because by this point, the psychiatrist, the parents, and the police were all convinced that Mr. Smile was quite real and quite dangerous. The authorities had checked to make sure there were no known predators living in the area, which they had confirmed was not the case. But it was quite clear that whoever this Mr. Smile was, he was a real person who had been sneaking into the homes of these children at night. None of the children claimed to know how he got in. They say they would just wake up and he'd be there at the foot of their bed. Sometimes they said he would be singing something, but not in English. It sounded like a lullaby, they said. It made them feel safe. Finally, the children were asked to draw Mr. Smile, as they couldn't put into words how he looked. Each and every one of the children picked up a red crayon and proceeded to color the entire page until it was just a rectangle of red. When asked about this, they insisted that they had drawn Mr. Smile. When asked where his head, arms, and legs were, they would insist they had drawn those. They claimed they had drawn a perfect picture of the man at the foot of their bed, and when they were told they had simply colored the page and not drawn anything, all they became deeply angry, feeling as they were being accused of lying and insisting that what they had drawn was a picture of the man they had seen. Acting on more of a hunch than anything else, the psychiatrist decided to show one of the colored-in rectangles to the various children and ask them what it was. Each and every one of them, with no knowledge of what the picture was supposed to be or who had drawn it, and with no knowledge that the other children had been spoken about this subject even existed, replied that it was a picture of Mr. Smile. Cameras and baby monitors were placed in the children's rooms so that they could be monitored. Many of the parents simply stopped sleeping altogether, staying up all night, staring at the screens that displayed where their children slept. At no point did anyone enter or exit the bedrooms. No sounds except for them snoring or occasionally talking in their sleep were heard over the baby monitors. There was no sign of Mr. Smile. After 2 weeks of this, many of them began to doubt that Mr. Smile had ever existed. Other psychiatrists since have put the whole thing down to some strange shared delusion that, while it couldn't be explained yet, did not have any basis in reality. Some suggested that maybe this whole Mr. Smile thing had a basis in a TV show or film that the children had all watched, leading them to dream up something similar. Then one of the boys went missing. The camera in his room had gone dead at around 2 in the morning. His mother had run to check in on him only to find his room empty. It had literally taken her less than a minute to run to his room. There was no possible way for him to leave, or be taken, and be out of her sight in the time it took her to leave her bedroom and run towards his, but he was gone. She said that there was a smell like cotton candy in the room. The search for the boy turned up nothing. No one had seen anything strange or unusual around the home before or during the disappearance, and no trace of him was ever found. It was less than a week later that one of the girls who had spoken to Mr. Smile vanished as well. Then another one of the boys. One by one, each of them began to disappear, until only 4 remained. The 4 remaining children began to talk about how Mr. Smile and his friends were going to take them away soon. When asked about these friends, they all talked about how Mr. Smile lived with the other smiling men in the happy place, and that he would take them there soon. They said there were lots of people there already, and that in the happy place everything was beautiful. They said that they needed to know about it. Pardon me? They said that they knew about it because Mr. Smile talked to them in their heads, because he couldn't talk like other people did, and that he would show them pictures in their heads of the place that they were going. Things began to get increasingly disturbing. After a few weeks, the children began complaining of headaches and nausea. Their schools reported that they began to suffer hallucinations, and 2 of them started complaining that they didn't like the place that Mr. Smile was showing them anymore. One began screaming for half an hour, acting as if they were having a fit, and screaming for the colors to stop. That the colors were horrible, and they needed them to go away. One of the children claimed that Mr. Smile was talking to them in their head all the time now, and was telling them things. Terrible things. But that they couldn't talk about it. that they mustn't because then their parents would know about the terrible things too. The psychiatrist asked them to write down what Mr. Smile was saying, promising that he would show it to no one, managing to gain the trust of one of the boys enough that he agreed. The contents of the book are known only to him and the authorities, but whenever anyone involved has been asked about it, they just get real quiet and quickly find an excuse to change the subject. The children stopped sleeping. Footage from the security cameras showed them both sitting bolt upright, their eyes unblinking, just staring at the wall without moving or making a sound. Sedatives did nothing. One of the girls began cutting strange circular marks into her skin, while two of the boys ceased communicating in English altogether. The language they spoke was never identified, and despite numerous people being asked to listen to them, they could not translate what the children are saying. By the start of 1999, all 4 of the children had vanished into thin air. There was no trace of who took them. Searches have turned up nothing to this day, with no indication of where they are or if they're even dead or alive. No suspects have ever been found either. All 4 of them appear to have simply vanished into thin air, much like the others, all of whom also remain missing, their disappearances unexplained. That's a good one. It's a good one. I like that one. I'm gonna rank that as number 3 of my top 3. Oh, excuse me. Oh, I'm so sorry. I'm really burpy tonight. I'm so sorry. But yes. Mr. Smile. So yeah, so if you see the sky at the foot of your bed, you're kind of fucked. There's nothing I can do for you. I deeply apologize. Take care, have fun, go fast while you still have a chance of seeing nice things as opposed to spooky things. But yeah. My throat is starting to... Yeah, no, like, this is pretty good. Yeah, that's pretty good. Nice borp. Thank you. I made it myself. I'm gonna turn the music slightly back up. Oops, whoops, whoop, whoop, whoop. You didn't see that? You didn't see that. Alright. Oh, there goes the clock. Tick-tock, there goes my clock. But yeah, I don't think I'll be reading any more pastas for tonight because my throat is starting to go. It is no longer being the throat goat. But, you know, I think that's a good place to leave it on. Like I streamed for an hour, and that's generally like a pretty good time stamp from what I hear about other people streaming on YouTube. If you want to continue chatting with me, I will be on my Discord for the next couple hours. Just casually chatting with, you know, friends, fans, whatever. So please, everybody, take care of yourselves. Have a wonderful, spooky October. And I will see you all tomorrow for another spooky stream. Goodbye, everybody. Goodbye.